If you are not yet a member of the Patreon, link is in the description. Please consider becoming a member, as you will have access to many videos you cannot find here on YouTube. There are three people that I'd argue played the biggest roles in the rise of P. Diddy early on. A guy by the name of Andre Harrell, who worked at Def Jam and later founded Uptown Records in 1986. This is where Diddy would work for Harrell as an intern all the way to talent director and later VP of AR, where he would discover and help develop Mary J. Blige and Jodeci.
I was thinking to myself the other day, Uptown Records started with 5 people. Andre Harrell, I'll Be Sure, Heavy D, and Puffy. And Kim was the longest working employee because she was there from the very beginning. She was Andre's personal assistant. Kim is dead. Heavy D is dead. Andre Harrell is dead. The only 2 left are Puffy and Al almost died. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
This is also where Diddy would meet the would-be mother of his children, Kim Porter, who would mysteriously pass away many years later after she separated from Diddy. Uptown is also where Diddy would face similar accusations of sexual abuse, acts of violence, such as the 1991 Community College of New York celebrity basketball game that led to several people losing their lives that night. In his memoir, Notorious C.O.P., the former head of the NYPD Rap Intelligence Unit, Derek Parker, a COINTELPRO legacy program that grew directly out of Interagency Corporation and the Boss Unit, shares his first introduction to Diddy. Even before the CCNY disaster, well before he was a tabloid fixture, I became aware of Puffy, Sean Combs. He was hard to miss as he galvanized around early 90s hip-hop clubs and up the ladder of the music industry right from the bottom rung. At the time, Puffy was little known outside music biz circles. He wasn't even a performer yet, but a rising A&R executive at Uptown Records who threw crazy, notoriously raucous parties at a Midtown club called Red Zone. I knew about Puffy even then because I'd always kept one foot in the music world. I'd been promoting parties and hitting the clubs, as well as performing and recording demos as an R&B singer. And then Harrell would eventually fire Diddy in 1993, but surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, for reasons completely unrelated to those accusations, but instead due to Harrell feeling that Diddy had become too quote-unquote cocky. And Harrell is also the one responsible for hiring Israeli-American Lear Cohen, who has worked with several prominent figures, including Young Thug, another Masonic puppet we have covered on this channel multiple times. Another major influence or mentor of Diddy's, I would have to say, is Russell Simmons, maybe more so indirectly, who I have loosely covered in the past along with his allegations against him in my Oprah video. Go and check that out when you get a chance. Simmons is co-founder of Def Jam Records, responsible for hiring Andre Harrell, who by the way was loosely tied to organized crime at the previous news station he worked at prior to joining Def Jam. And within 2 years at Def Jam, Andre Harrell moved up the ranks extremely and unusually fast to become VP and GM, very similar to the quick and suspicious rise of P. Diddy and the music industry as well. But part of the reason Def Jam was so successful at the time was due in part to his 1984 distribution deal with CBS and its subsidiary Columbia Records, run by their Jewish owner Walter Yetnikoff, who will come up later in this video for an extremely interesting and important reason that you don't want to miss. But this Walter guy worked with all the music icons such as Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, James Taylor, and the list goes on. But he was also a close friend of another guy by the name of Clive Davis. Clive Davis, I would argue, is the third and most influential groomer and mentor of not only Sean Diddy Combs' career, but also his behind-the-scenes inappropriate behaviors, allegations, and tactics. And because of this, Clive Davis will be the sole focus of today's video. In fact, what many people don't know and will learn in this video is that Clive Davis's rise and dominance in the music industry is 100% tied to organized crime and intelligence agencies. And I will prove that in this video. Usually recognized as a pioneer and a legend in the music industry, Clive Davis has also been called an evil master puppeteer, accused of controlling artists' lives, using them until they were no longer any good to him, then disposing of them, and accused of sexually, financially, and psychologically exploiting many people in the music industry. Former CEO of Death Row Suge Knight even claims himself that, quote, Clive Davis, Russell Simmons, and Andre Harrell used alcohol and drugs to compromise Combs' manhood. A man in Clive Davis that waited until his 80s to admit in his memoir, showing the one-eye symbolism on the cover, by the way, that the wildly popular decades-old rumor was true, that he was bisexual. What other rumor did Clive Davis hold back from sharing as true? This video will cover the music industry, Clive Davis, and the individuals that directly inspired Sean Diddy Combs, their connection to criminal enterprises, drugs, the occult, Freemasonry, rituals, blackmail, lies, and even abuse. Welcome back to another episode of Diddy Got a Podcast, and of course, I'm your host, Diddy. This will easily be the most in-depth, controversial, and detailed video covering Clive Davis, his career, his influence on Diddy, and even the people that influenced Clive Davis that will better help us understand why Diddy is and was the way that he's been throughout his career. Trust me, I've done the research, I've looked all over the internet. You won't find a video more detailed than this one. So all I ask for you to show me that you really appreciate the weeks that it took to conduct the research for this video and to put this video together is to just hit the like button and to hop in the comment section and to give me your thoughts at the end of the video. I would really appreciate it. I always enjoy interacting with you all. And I also want to give a huge shout out to one of the greatest researchers, in my opinion, easily over the past couple of decades, Miss Whitney Webb. More particularly, her incredibly impressive article called One Label Under Blackmail, where she links Clive Davis to P. Diddy, to Jeffrey Epstein, to many politicians, and to many other crime families. It's an incredible article. I'll try to remember to include that in the description. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video.
Oh yeah, Diddy got a podcast.
My next guest has nurtured such superstars as Barry Manilow, Melissa Manchester, Chicago, Simon and Garfunkel, Janis Joplin, and the list is endless. Today he's brought his latest discovery with him, and she is, in 2 words, simply breathtaking. I want you to meet this giant of a man, this giant of a man, this giant of a man, probably the most knowledgeable man the record business has ever known, probably the most knowledgeable man the record business has ever known, the president of Arista, Clive Davis. Clive?
Clive Davis was born on April 4th, 1932 in Brooklyn, New York City to Jewish parents Herman and Florence Davis. So to be clear, Clive Davis is listed as both Jewish and from European Ashkenazi descent. His father was an electrician and salesman. Davis was raised in Crowns Heights, Brooklyn, and attended Erasmus Hall High School. His mother died at the age of 47, and his father died the following year when Davis was still a teenager. Clive Davis then moved in with his married sister who lived in Bayside, Queens. Then Davis attended New York University College of Arts and Science, where he graduated magna cum laude with a degree in political science and Phi Beta Kappa in 1953. He received a full scholarship to Columbia Law School, where he was a member of the Board of Student Advisors and graduated in 1956. The Phi Beta Kappa Society is the oldest academic honor society in the United States. It was founded in 1776 at the College of William and Mary in Virginia. The Phi Beta Kappa Society had its first meeting on December 5th, 1776 at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia by 5 students with John Heath as its first president. The society established the precedent for naming American college societies after the initial letters of a secret Greek motto. The group consisted of students who frequented the Rayleigh Tavern as a common meeting area off the college campus. A persistent story maintains that a Masonic lodge also met at this tavern, but the Freemasons gathered at a different building in Williamsburg. Some of the original members of Phi Beta Kappa did become Freemasons, but later in life. Whether the students organized to meet more freely and discuss non-academic topics or to discuss politics in a revolutionary society is unknown. The earliest records indicate only that the students met to debate and engage in oratory and on topics that would have been not far removed from the curriculum. Someone by the name of Alicia Parmalee, an alumnus of Yale College and Harvard College, passed through Williamsburg and took charters from the Phi Beta Kappa to establish branches of the society at these schools. A second chapter was founded at Yale College in late 1780, a third at Harvard College in 1781, and a fourth at Dartmouth College in 1787. Phi Beta Kappa was a secret society to protect its members and to instill a sense of solidarity. The new society was given the motto that translates in English to mean love of learning is the god of life. Greek was chosen because it was the language of science in Roman times. So Phi Beta Kappa member Clive Davis will go on to practice law in a small firm in New York, then moved on to the firm of Rosenman and Collin, LLP 2 years later, where partner Ralph Collin had CBS as a client. Rosenman and Collin just so happened to represent two offshore banks owned by someone named Bruce Rappaport, which makes me wonder if he's related to the comedian and actor Michael Rappaport, but that's neither here nor there, which reportedly acted as a holding sites for money linked to various illegal enterprises, including drug trafficking. According to One Nation Under Blackmail, which will be linked in the description, Rappaport maintained strong connections with the CIA, most notably through his friendship with William Casey, as well as ties to Israeli intelligence and organized crime circles. He was especially linked to criminal networks involving Simeon Mogilevich, a major Eastern Europe crime figure who later formed a business partnership in the late 1980s with the one and only Mossad agent Robert Maxwell, who, for those of you who don't know, is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand accomplice. Davis was subsequently hired by a former colleague at the firm, Harvey Sheen, to become assistant counsel of CBS subsidiary Columbia Records at the young age of 28, and then general counsel the following year. Harvey Lester Sheen was also Jewish of European Ashkenazi descent that came from a Jewish immigrant family background in New York. And then Harvey Sheen was actually the protege of someone called William Paley, who is the son of Ukrainian Jewish immigrants, known as the quote-unquote father of modern broadcasting. During World War II, Paley served in the Office of War Information and became Chief of Radio of the U.S. Military Psychological Warfare Division. Paley also had a very close relationship with the wealthy descendants of the Rockefeller dynasty, David and Nelson, as well as others close to the Rockefellers, such as former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. As part of a reorganization of Columbia Records Group President Goddard Leberson, a white guy born in 1911 in England to Russian Jewish immigrant parents, appointed Davis as administrative vice president and general manager in 1965. And this guy Goddard is actually known as a pioneer for expanding the label's influence and creating a corporate culture where Jewish lawyers and executives could rise in the music industry. In 1966, CBS formed the Columbia CBS Group, which reorganized CBS's recorded music operations into CBS Records, with Clive Davis heading the new unit. In 1967, Clive Davis would take an interest in the newest generation of folk rock and rock and roll. In June of 1967, Davis attended the Monterey Pop Festival after his friends and business associate Lou Adler convinced him. Lou Adler was a Jewish-American record and film producer and the co-owner of Roxy Theater in West Hollywood, California, and worked with several musical legends, including Sam Cooke, the legendary soul artist, but also the alleged quote-unquote pansexual, as it states in his 2005 biography, Dream Boogie, The Triumph of Sam Cooke, that he, quote, had an appeal for both sexes, generating a pansexual hysteria. Well, attending this concert would actually lead to Clive Davis signing Janis Joplin. You know, the same Janis Joplin that Clive Davis will later admit offered him sexual favors to be able to move up in the music industry, and he claimed to have declined these sexual favors. This also would lead to him signing Pink Floyd, Bob Dylan, and even legendary groups such as Aerosmith and Earth, Wind & Fire to Columbia Records in 1972. You know, the same Bob Dylan that is on record infamously alluding in an interview to the fact that he sold his soul a long time ago and has to keep up his end of the bargain.
Why do you still do it? Why are you still out here?
Well, it goes back to the destiny thing. I made a bargain with it, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my end.
What was your bargain?
To get where I am now.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
with the chief commander.
On this earth?
And on this earth, and then in the world we can't see.
Earth, Wind, and Fire, for those of you who don't know, was no different from Bob Dylan or any of these other greats that we have discussed on this channel. They were heavily into the occult and astrology as well. In fact, astrology is what led to the name of their group, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Heavily inspired by not only Clive Davis, but another guy named Maurice White, who was the founder of the group. He was really big into universal love, enlightenment, and the quote-unquote love is love concept. Maurice was also heavily infatuated with pyramids, the Sphinx, which we have discussed several times concerning the Boule, and infatuated with ancient Kemet, or ancient Egyptian mythology. And he was open about it in interviews. The Bible, which is often used as a distraction and confusion in Freemasonry and fraternities, much like what we heard from ex-sorority member Melissa Blair. This is done to make it appear as if their belief system is rooted in the God of the Bible, when the truth is many Freemasons are taught to study all religions so that they can be well equipped and well informed to be able to better disarm many believers. But I digress. These people were also heavily influenced by Aleister Crowley as well, as he was already extremely influential with the music industry by the 1960s and 70s. For example, the Beatles included Crowley's face on the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover in 1967. David Bowie referenced Crowley in Quicksand in 1971, stating, "I'm closer to the Golden Dawn," immersed in Crowley's uniform of imagery. Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, and Ozzy Osbourne also later invoked Crowley's name and imagery directly. Because remember, Crowley's self-made religion, Thelema, was explicitly based on what he described in his book of the law as a revelation in 1904 from an Egyptian deity named Awis, Aiwass. We also spoke about Crowley's heavy influence on the younger generation, such as XXXTentacion as an example. But it was in 1973 when the first quote-unquote big scandal would make major headlines as CBS fired Clive Davis amid allegations of misuse of funds and providing drugs to artists and disc jockeys as part of an alleged payola scandal. We'll come back to that. But this one in particular was called the Dragola scandal, right? That accused Clive Davis and Columbia of using cocaine and trafficking cocaine in what was considered the biggest scandal of the decade. And what's also interesting is when you usually hear about drug trafficking, you always hear about a Colombian drug lord. So you see how that works? It's almost like they play on the name Columbia. And if you take a step back and just look at Clive Davis's career, he went to Columbia Law School. He worked for Columbia Records, CBS Records, and the subsidiary, including Columbia Pictures, which we're going to be speaking about here in just a little bit, which is also interesting because when you look at the Columbia Pictures image that's always shown, which is this woman holding up this light, it is very reminiscent of the Statue of Liberty, which is another rabbit hole that we could very easily go down. Well, that's very similar to the start of Columbia Records, because the founder claims that part of the reason he picked the logo for Columbia Records or Columbia Pictures, which is, in my opinion, the all-seeing eye, was because they had a quote-unquote vision for this new world of music. But I digress. It says here, CBS, in connection with the Project Sound probe, uncovered that Davis had left a quote-unquote trail of phony invoices totaling at least $94,000 over 6 years that were meant to cover up Davis's use of funds for personal parties and renovations to his properties. Davis was ultimately fired by CBS as a result. After Davis was fired from CBS Records in 1973 for allegedly using company funds to pay for his son's bar mitzvah, Columbia Pictures then hired him to be a consultant for the company's Bell Records label. Shortly after, Davis took over, changed the name, and then founded Arista Records in 1974, which ironically enough, or maybe not so ironically enough, the logo for Arista Records seems to highly resemble the symbol used by pedophiles or boy lovers to identify one another, which is interesting enough because when you think about the name of P. Diddy's record label, Bad Boy Records, then it starts to make more and more sense, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Bad Boy Entertainment. I named it Bad Boy because I wanted to go against the grain. Anytime you go against the grain, they consider you like kind of bad. Nothing negative, nothing like hardcore. Just, I didn't want to be regular.
What many people don't know is that label was actually co-founded alongside Clive by a Jewish man named Alan Hirschfeld, who had recently become CEO of Columbia Pictures in 1973. And Alan was mostly able to achieve this goal, as in becoming CEO of Columbia Pictures, due to his connection to Jewish co-founders of Allen and Company, Charles and Herbert Allen, who were close friends with Allen's father, Norman. Crime will run rampant in this video, as you will see, but crime also was no stranger to the Allen family, as it states here. Charles and Herbert Allen and their firm, Allen and Company, have documented ties to intelligence-linked figures and scandals, as well as organized crime. As noted in One Nation Under Blackmail, the Allen brothers had significant organized crime connections, particularly via companies based in the Bahamas that were run and developed by close associates of Jewish mobster and co-founder of the National Crime Syndicate, Meyer Lansky. In addition, Allen & Co. was a client of the CIA-linked David Baird Foundation, and Charles and Allen and David Baird had several dealings with an associate of mob boss Motola and Alexander Guterma, who was a key part of the United Dye scandal that had also ensnared figures like Khan. The company was named after New York City's secondary school honor society of that same name, of which Davis was a member. The name Arista is derived from the Greek god Aristeus, who was the son of the god Apollo, which is the same Greek god that the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity worships and vows secrecy and reverence to. After Clive officially launched Arista, he would sign several artists such as Aretha Franklin. Clive Davis would also sign several others at the record label, such as The Outlaws, Alicia Keys, The Grateful Dead, TLC, and the list goes on. Well, Clive Davis would eventually become the focus of another major investigation as well, which will later become known as Project Sound, as we mentioned earlier. As it states here, allegations began to surface in the press that CBS Records had bribed black radio stations and done business with an organized crime figure. The scandal ultimately led to Clive Davis's decision to make a deal in 1971 with two record producers tied to Motown Records, Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. Davis had sought out Gamble and Huff due to a desire to quote-unquote conquer the R&B charts. As part of the negotiations, Davis allowed Gamble's and Huff's company to promote the music that, per the deal, was produced and distributed by CBS. CBS was implicated in the arrangement through David Winshaw, Clive Davis's closest aide at CBS. Press reports soon stated that CBS Music subsidiaries were being investigated for bribing radio stations not just with money, but also drugs and sex in order to quote-unquote increase use of its products on black-oriented radio stations. And just to go a little bit deeper, for those of you that don't know, what was payola in a more broader sense? Alright, so payola was, or still is, depending on who you ask, the illegal practice of record labels or their intermediaries paying radio stations or DJs to play certain songs, making them seem more popular than they actually were. And it had been a problem in the 1950s and resurfaced again in the late 1970s and 1980s in a more sophisticated form. In the 1980s, instead of directly bribing DJs, record labels would pay enormous sums to independent music promoters known collectively as the quote-unquote network. These promoters were essentially gatekeepers between record labels and radio stations, and the labels funneled money to them, sometimes millions per year. In exchange, the network made sure that radio programmers would show favoritism and give special airplay to their artists. And so earlier I mentioned the Jewish owner of Columbia Records at the time, someone by the name of Walter Yetnikoff, right? Well, he was also heavily implicated in the payola scandals as well that was taking place in the 1980s, right? So the way it worked was CBS Records, which was once again ran by Walter Yetnikoff, was one of the biggest clients of the quote-unquote network. Labels often didn't question how the promoters got the results. They just paid the fees, right? And so what critics will later say, more specifically congressional investigators, argued that the network operated like a mob-style protection racket. If labels didn't pay the quote-unquote indies, their songs might not get played. Paying up ensured radio spins and chart success. So by the mid-1980s, the FBI and the Justice Department began investigating, suspecting ties between the network and organized crime. And so in 1986, the New York Times and other outlets exposed that the quote-unquote independent promotion system had become a shadow industry worth $80 to $100 million annually. CBS Records, along with Warner, RCA, and other majors, were implicated as heavy users of this system. And Walter Yetkinov took deliberate measures to preserve the payola system that dominated the industry at the time. In 1983, he dismissed his deputy president, Dick Asher, and according to UPI, intervened to halt an inquiry by the Recording Industry Association of America. By 1986, oversight of CBS Records had transitioned to Jewish businessman Lawrence Tisch, appointed by the quote-unquote father of modern broadcasting, William Paley. And so Lawrence Tisch, the Jewish billionaire, head of Lowe's Corporation, whose family is also known for their Jewish philanthropic work and even supporting major institutions like NYU, which is very similar to how Jeffrey Epstein randomly gave money to colleges as well, including a $6.5 million gift, quote-unquote gift, to Harvard University in between 1998 and 2007. Well, Tisch was also a founding member of the Mega Group, organized by Jewish businessman Leslie Wexner and Charles Bronfman. And if the name Leslie Wexner sounds familiar, it's because Leslie Wexner is the guy who had an extremely close and unusual relationship with the infamous predator, Jewish quote-unquote financier, Jeffrey Epstein, a relationship that no one really knows how to fully explain. What we do know is that they met in the mid-80s. Epstein was retained by Wexner as his personal financial manager. He had quote-unquote wide latitude over Wexner's finances, including power of attorney, acquired some of Wexner's properties, managed many of Wexner's affairs, and Wexner even gave Epstein responsibility for certain trust foundation rules, such as serving as trustee of the Wexner Foundation Board. And in addition, Clive Davis's associate, Walter Yetkinov, also titled his memoir, Howling at the Moon. This is because he was infamous for hard partying, heavy drinking, and cocaine use during his time running CBS. The point of me mentioning people's sexuality and mentioning people's habits, even at the very top, such as CEOs and executives, is to show you that this is not just running rampant with artists and producers, that this is a culture that is literally culminated and created by the CEOs and the execs. So this memoir, Howling at the Moon, was supposed to capture, right, this so-called untamed, almost animalistic side of Walter's lifestyle. Also, as many of you would know, if you followed the channel long enough, Aleister Crowley was huge into moon magic, as he believed the moon to be one of the quote-unquote planetary powers of correspondences that were part of a system of magical imagery and functions to help someone discover their quote-unquote true real. Walter Yetnikov titled his book Howling at the Moon because he believed in moon magic as well. He believed that the moon symbolized something greater than himself. And if you've seen my Michael Jackson video, we've covered MJ's obsession with Aleister Crowley and the moon, from his album covers, his attire, 777, and even the quote-unquote moonwalk. The moonwalk had a double meaning. And to help drive this point home, if you're not fully convinced yet, think about it this way. Michael Jackson's sixth album, not his first, not his second, but his sixth album was Thriller. And what was Thriller about, right? The entire concept of the album, but especially the single from the album, Thriller. It was about zombies and werewolves affected by the moon, right? And also, when you think about it like this, Pink Floyd, all of these artists were under Columbia Records at the time, or at some point in time. Take a listen to this. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Michael Jackson has a song called Scared of the Moon. Ozzy Osbourne, Bark at the Moon. Paul Simon, Song About the Moon. Van Morrison, Moon Dance. Grateful Dead, Mountains of the Moon. Creedence Clearwater Revival, Bad Moon Rising. Neil Young, Harvest Moon. David Bowie, Moonage Daydream. Iron Maiden, Moon Child. The Rolling Stones, Child of the Moon. They had a really big infatuation with the moon, and especially when you consider the fact that during the Roman Empire, Luna is the moon goddess. And we've spoken about this many times before on the channel, right? So Sol and Luna can represent the extent of Roman rule over the world. And speaking of MJ, I want to remind everybody of something. During MJ's time alive, MJ had a list of people on something that he called his quote-unquote enemy list. And I think it's a very interesting list of people, right? One of them was a guy by the name of Rabbi Shmuley, who ironically enough is the same man that debated Candace Owens and has a business selling sex toys with his own daughter, right? Which is not weird at all, right? Another person on this list is the Jewish psychic Uri Geller. Another person is popular Jewish civil rights attorney Gloria Allred. Another one is Irish-American Tom Sneddon, who is a district attorney. Another person is former CEO of Sony Entertainment, Jewish man Tommy Mottola. And then you have Latino-American Janet Arvizo, who was the mother of one of Jackson's accusers. I just thought that was very interesting. And in 1983, while in a small New York club called Sweetwater's, Clive Davis would hear a backup artist singing with her mother that would blow him away. He was instantly inspired to sign her. This person turned out to go by the name of Whitney Houston. This would then lead to him signing her, shaping her image, and connecting her with top producers in the industry. Then he introduced Whitney to the mainstream world by bringing her to the Merv Griffin national television show on June 23, 1983, as she sang beautifully over a white and black checkerboard flooring in between two twin pillars. Just 2 years later, in 1985, her debut album would drop, self-entitled Whitney Houston, and she would follow up with an album titled Whitney in 1987, which made her a global superstar. Clive and Whitney would go on to produce 11 #1 albums in a row between 1985 and 1998. During that legendary run, Whitney Houston would meet and marry Bobby Brown, who I believe was under the programming, by the way, in 1992. And this is really when the drug use heavily increased, reportedly cocaine and marijuana being the drugs of choice. This just so happened to be the same year she starred in her biggest film, The Bodyguard, with the hit song I Will Always Love You, which is a film many people don't know Clive Davis also helped produce. So the rumors of him controlling every facet of his artist's image and career seem more and more credible the more we look into these artists' careers. Which is a rumor, by the way, Clive actually addressed once, being quoted stating, "I wouldn't use the word control. If the artist writes, you wait until the album is delivered," someone like Alicia Keys. But when an artist does not write, an Aretha Franklin, a Whitney Houston, or a Dionne Warwick, they ask me to produce their album, to be the one going to all the writers and publishers, sifting through all the material for them. So there you're collaborating in a more personalized manner. So I don't know why you're using the word quote-unquote control. However, by 1997, Whitney's career and life really began to decelerate at a rapid pace. She began missing quite a few shows, canceling tours, and her behavior became more and more erratic. By 2003, her problems became public as she began missing interviews and having erratic moments on camera. Reports claimed that Clive Davis was offering to help Whitney, trying to get her to go to rehab, pay for treatments, and encourage her. But many people argue that he only did this because he needed to use and exploit her to make more money. Things would only get worse by 2008 when Whitney Houston was signed to Clive Davis once again at J Records to produce her album I Look to You, which also went #1. But she was very heavily using drugs and even openly spoke about it in an Oprah interview.
Your marijuana, you lace it, you roll it up, and you smoke it, and you weed. It's just another form. It's like almost like heroin and cocaine speedballing, but you level it off with the marijuana. Okay.
So your drug of choice was weed combined with cocaine.
Rock cocaine.
With rock cocaine.
Yes.
And despite Clive Davis knowing this, he still sent her on an international tour where she would perform some of her worst and most embarrassing performances, one of which in front of the president of Kazakhstan. Former music industry singer Jaguar Wright even shares the details as well.
He was the one trying to bring her back, though, at the time of prior to her death, right?
He needed her back.
Oh, yeah.
He needed her back. But he needed her back and under his control. You want to know what Clive Davis did for Whitney Houston while he was busy trying to bring her back? See, people forget, before she came to the United States, he sent her on an international tour. And she went out on tour and she was still getting high at the time. You know, let's see. What happens if I put in Whitney Houston, Kazakhstan?
That's where she went? She was out in Kazakhstan? Oh, man.
This was not long before she passed away.
I think I know.
She only did 4 songs.
Yeah, I think I know. I think I remember The Voice. Yeah, I remember you with The Voice. I know where you're about to go with this. I think I remember this.
Not just The Voice.
Just everything.
The whole show.
Oh, ouch.
Straight to commercial.
Yeah, I see that. It's definitely...
It'll make you cry if you really love music and if you really love Whitney Houston.
It is even said that Clive Davis and Whitney Houston had a nasty fight just 2 days prior to her untimely demise. But let's talk about her untimely demise. Because on that day, February 11, 2012, or another way to think about that date is 02/12/2012, Whitney Houston would allegedly pass away due to drowning in extremely hot bath water, might I add, with heart disease and cocaine use deemed as contributing factors according to the coroner office's autopsy report.
Hi, how you doing? This is security from Beverly Hilton. Hi, what's going on there? I need the paramedics. Apparently, we got a 46-year-old female found in the bathroom. That's all I've got right now, but they're requesting paramedics. Oh, okay. Female found in the bathroom. What room is she in? I'm not sure. She fell or she was in the bathroom with the water. 434, I'm sorry. That's room 434? Yes. Okay, and that's not east-west or anything else? It's room 434? Yeah. Okay, and you don't know if she's conscious of breathing at all? Apparently she wasn't breathing, and she's 46-year-old. She was not breathing? Yes. Okay, but she is breathing now? I don't know.
However, it was also reported by a private investigator that her body was actually badly beaten, which is inconsistent with the quote-unquote accident narrative. This private investigator also reported that he had evidence to suggest that there were 2 drug dealers that killed Whitney Houston. On this day, she was found unconscious at 3:55 p.m. in suite number 434, submerged in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, which just so happened to coincide with the 2012 Grammy Awards, which took place the same exact day. In fact, the pre-Grammy party, hosted by none other than Clive Davis, continued as scheduled despite everyone in attendance, including Clive, knowing that Whitney's deceased body was laying just above them as they partied.
Strong feelings about that. I, too, was an addict. I know if I were on a set of a movie, even now, I recovered for 7 years, we'd have made, if I was coming to a city like LA, we'd have made specific plans that I come in night before or day of performance. Especially if you haven't gone into proper treatment and gotten your situation handled. Yeah, that was the first big mistake. For her to come in an entire week before her performance at the party. I'd have never done that.
I was just shocked that it was happening. I was seeing all these pictures of her apparently falling out of clubs and covered in whether it was blood or wine, but certainly the fact that she was drinking in public in these clubs in Hollywood seemed to me a potential recipe for disaster.
It was. It absolutely was. And I stand by that. I stand on that. I stand on that whoever flew her out to perform at that party should have provided someone to be there to somehow just keep the riffraff out of the situation. Just keep some of the dangerous people away.
Was she very vulnerable, do you think, Whitney,
yes.
even to the end, to that kind of situation?
Absolutely. I'm very vulnerable. I will never do cocaine again. I know that. But we are sensitive, highly sensitive people, entertainers.
You were, I think, going to go to the Clive Davis party.
Yes.
It was a surreal event where Whitney's body was still in the hotel, and there was this sort of party where apparently half the room were in tears, the other half were kind of partying. What did you feel about that?
I thought that was complete insanity. And knowing Whitney, I don't believe that she would have said, the show must go on. She was the kind of woman that was said, stop everything. I'm not going to be there. I don't know what could motivate a person to have a party in a building where the person whose life he had influenced so enormously and whose life had been affected by her. So they were like, I don't understand how that party went on.
I had Clive Davis by pure chance in here on Friday night with Jennifer Hudson, and he obviously worshipped Whitney, and I think he must have gone through agony when he heard this news, knowing it was 2 or 3 hours till this event.
Right.
And I think he took the decision to turn it into a tribute to her. And I understand that. I mean, he obviously was wrestling with the right thing to do.
That would have been right if it really was a true tribute, and a true tribute, might have been a truer, a more honest tribute in my opinion, would have been maybe call everybody together, let's say a prayer, and let's eat dinner and go home.
One could argue that this was a form of an energy harvesting ritual. Remember, the Grammys is usually some sort of public ritual taking place for the masses, as we have covered Sam Smith in the past, Madonna's performance, the 2017 Beyoncé performance, and the list goes on. There have also been rumors over the years that Ray J, whom Whitney was allegedly romantically involved with at the time, despite their huge age difference, and even though I have good reason to believe that they actually weren't dating, but it was a different type of relationship that we're about to speak about in a moment, it's been alleged that he was actually present at the hotel when everything happened. Now, I do want to state for the record that he's come out multiple times and denied this and claimed that he was actually in a completely different state at a show.
I barely speak on Whitney. She's Whitney Houston.
Yes. Number one, you mentioned murder.
If you look on all my comments,
yes,
every time I go live, anything, you kill Whitney.
Okay.
That happens in spam.
Now speak your truth on that.
Here's the truth. I love Whitney. I was with Whitney every day. She was one of the most important people to me.
So y'all had a real relationship?
1,000%, bro.
The real emotions?
Bro, that was my people, bro. We was gonna make it official the night she passed, bro. We didn't get a chance to, and I was on my way back and just never saw her again, bro. Niggas is saying that I was in the room when she died. Bro, that's the biggest cap I've ever heard. I've heard it since the beginning. I wasn't even there. I was nowhere around.
Where were you?
I was in San Diego doing a show.
Okay.
When I got back to the hotel, they did not let me up until everything was cleared and it was just the family. That's when I was able to go upstairs and see the family. This is you talking like late at night. When I pull up, I got my shoes. I'm ready to go to the event. I just talked to her on the phone. She's not there no more. It's over. And Ray, who is her bodyguard, he found her and he called me. CNN says Ray J found her. And then 10 minutes later, oh no, Ray, her bodyguard. That's 10 minutes later, bro. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. But so, there's a innocence with jumping to conclusion, and you can kind of see why. Obviously, there's similarities in names, but that was not you.
I was nowhere to be found.
Right.
And I hate talking about it because I got so much love for her. I've never seen her in that state.
Yeah.
They never. So to make me that person when I wasn't even there, and then to put murderer on top of that.
Did you guys do drugs?
I've never done one drug with Whitney. And then when niggas ask me, did Whitney do drugs? I mean, you don't gotta, there's certain things you can ask me and I'll tell you about me. But you don't gotta ask the other question because you already know, it's Whitney. Everybody knows certain answers. After that shit happened, I tried hard drugs for the first time after this happened because I was just I didn't know what was going on, bro. I was totally
Did you ever witness her doing drugs?
Whitney?
Yes.
I don't want to talk about that because then it's put it like this. I'm way younger, bro.
Mm-hmm.
She's in control, bro. She's Whitney. She's a boss. And so to make me the big dog, I'm not the big dog, bro. I'm the little nigga, bro. I'm the little homie.
But of course, as always, after Whitney passed away, just like every other musician and artist, her music and popularity resurged and her numbers skyrocketed, which means once again, Clive Davis came out on the winning side of things. But that's not all. Many people have accused Clive Davis of actually being responsible for calling the drug dealers that showed up to Whitney's hotel that night to collect a 7-figure debt worth over $1.5 million that she owed due to her drug addiction. And many people also don't know that during the Diddy trial earlier this year, one of the drug dealers was allegedly named and his name was Ray J. This prompted a couple of people attending the trial to speculate that the only logical conclusion would be that one of the drug dealers that is, was Ray J, the R&B singer, which caused a heated back and forth online between Ray J and the accusers.
Ray J was brought up in court today. They told Donna, drug dealer Ray J, she said, I don't know if that's his name. It sounds like that singer, but I don't think it's him.
Yeah, when I heard that, as a matter of fact, I think everybody gasped when we heard
gasped.
That. Because we still want justice for Whitney Houston. Ray J was Whitney Houston's gay best friend, selling her illegal substances. and it's alleged that he gave her a fatal cocktail because Clive Davis allegedly had an insurance policy on her, and obviously when these celebrities pass away, their music sell like crazy. And Whitney Houston was supposed to perform that night, and we know that her performance skills just went down the drain. So, Ray J, the feds are watching you.
But why did they say the drug dealer today was Ray J? Do you think it's the same guy? She's trying to say it's not, but you thought it was.
Absolutely, I believe it's Ray J, the singer. And if I had one wish, you need to come out the closet. That's what I wish. And I do believe it was that Ray J. What other person in Hollywood has the name Ray J? Nobody. It was him. You've been pushing the opioids and stuff over there in California. You got Whitney Houston unalive because you knew she was susceptible to it, and he pushed that off on Cassie. I'm willing to bet that Diddy didn't get Cassie hooked. It was Ray J.
It also doesn't help Ray J's case when you consider the fact that shortly before Whitney's death, she will be seen on camera crashing in an interview with Clive Davis and the R&B artist Brandy, who is the sister of Ray J, and Whitney can be seen slipping Brandy a note that many people saw as Whitney's attempt to cry out for help and inform Brandy that Whitney's life was in danger, and possibly by one or two individuals that Brandy knew. And many people believe because Brandy actually knew about this and she was possibly even related to a person that played a role, she remained silent. I also would like to note that it appears from this clip that Whitney kissed Clive Davis on the lips, which is extremely uncomfortable to watch and weird. And it only gets stranger once you realize that the same day that Whitney Houston lost her life just so happened to be Brandy's birthday, which is even more interesting when you consider the fact, or at least the theories that a lot of people have thrown out there over the years, that they believe that Clive Davis was done with Whitney Houston since she didn't and wasn't able to sing the way that she used to, and wanted to replace her with Brandy. And it also doesn't help when you consider the fact that Ray J seen a surge in his career after Miss Whitney Houston passed away, right? Later in 2012, he would guest appear as a recurring character on the Ricky Smiley Show, and he also co-hosted the reunion special in 2012 of the Bad Girls Club Las Vegas reunion, and then in 2013 he hosted the Bad Girls All-Star Battle, and then in 2014 he was on Love and Hip Hop Hollywood.
And then it's Grammy time,
That happened.
and her and Clive had a fight 2 days before. And from what I was told, Bobby Christina was present for some of that fight. And then the next thing you know, she's dead. Ray J was the last person to see her alive. He let the drug dealer in, but she was sober, right? But he let the drug dealer in that gave her the shot. Leola has said, Leola Brown, Bobby Brown's sister, has said on several occasions that she was beaten. They saw her body. She didn't just die in a tub, like she was beat up.
Oh, wow.
And Brandy was the one that found her. But you know, they pledge allegiance to Clive too.
Jeez.
Well, you know, Ray J was kind of down on his luck because the whole that happened, and then, you know, Whitney was dead and he was using her, as he's said himself, for clout, and then all of a sudden he got Love and Hip Hop LA after Whitney died.
Despite this, Clive Davis has also been accused of having an attraction to many men in the industry, including those he signed. His rivalry with legendary artist Barry White, whom I believe is a Freemason as well, allegedly stemmed from Barry White refusing to sign to Clive Davis because Barry had heard about all the control and abuse allegedly taking place, so he decided to start his own record label. Clive Davis has also been accused of sabotaging and emotionally blackmailing Luther Vandross's career and health due to forcing him to keep his sexuality a secret because the music industry wasn't quote-unquote ready for an openly homosexual R&B singer. It is also noted in Clive Davis's memoir that we referenced earlier in the video that he had only 2 romantic relationships with a man, one in which is a doctor and the other that he refuses to name out of respect for him. However, he does note in the memoir that the person has attended award shows and many red carpet events along with him. This is actually interesting to a lot of folks because obviously this could apply to Diddy on multiple levels. Clive does a great job in his memoir of not even naming the profession of the person, which also adds to the speculation, as he knows that by simply listing him as a CEO or a rapper or a producer, then it could expose the person's identity. This speculation seems more possible when you learn that Clive has also been accused most notoriously of being the person that groomed P. Diddy back in 1994, which led to Diddy rising in the music industry so fast, but also into adopting predatory tactics that Diddy would later allegedly use on others as well.
Rumor has it, allegedly, Diddy got on his knees for Clive Davis in 1994, and that's how Bad Boy Records came about.
And that is where we're going to end this video and pick up in part 2, where we're going to talk about Clive and Diddy's relationship on a more personal level, on a more detailed level, talk about Clive's influence and how it showed in Diddy's behaviors and accusations, along better explaining the allegations that Diddy has been facing over the past few decades. Right? Once again, hop in the comment section, give me your thoughts. Hit the like button if you don't mind. If you want the extended version, that's right, the uncensored and extended version of this video, please consider becoming a member of the Patreon. You can find the link to the Patreon in the description. Right? Once again, hit that like button if you don't mind. I'm Demetrius. I go by Diddy. Until next time. Peace.
Oh yeah, Diddy got a podcast.